So, I've got something super exciting for you today, and I can't wait to dive right into it. You know how so many of our listeners struggle with feeling confident when they're speaking English?
Oh my goodness, yes. And this is actually something I'm really passionate about. Like I've been helping people with this exact challenge for years now.
Um, that's exactly why I wanted to tackle this topic on QuickSpeak English today. I mean, confidence is such a huge part of, actually using the language.
Absolutely. And the thing is, well, it's not just about knowing the words, right? There's so much more to it. And I've got some amazing techniques that I know will help our listeners feel more natural when they're speaking.
That's exactly what I was hoping to hear. So, could you maybe share some of your best insights with our listeners?
Oh, I'd love to. You know what's really interesting? And I see this all the time with my students. Most people think confidence is just about vocabulary and grammar, but there's like so many other factors that come into play. I'm totally excited to break it all down for everyone today.
I can definitely tell how passionate you are about this, and I've got so many questions lined up. Um, let's start with something I've always wondered about. When it comes to confidence, does how we actually hold ourselves, like physically, make a difference?
Oh my goodness, yes. And this is actually one of the most important things I tell my students, like your body language. It's absolutely crucial, right? The way you carry yourself physically. It completely affects how confident you feel and sound.
So, what exactly should people be thinking about when it comes to their posture?
So the first thing is, well, you want to keep your shoulders back and your head up. Like imagine there's a string pulling you up from the top of your head, right? And what's really interesting is that when you do this, your voice actually projects better because your breathing improves.
Um, that makes so much sense. What about when someone's sitting down during a conversation?
That's such a good point. And when you're sitting, you want to, well, think about sitting towards the edge of your chair, right? Keep your back straight, but not like totally rigid. You know what I mean? It's about finding that balance between being relaxed and being engaged in the conversation.
And I've heard people talk about eye contact. Is that really important?
Absolutely. Eye contact is like, well, it's super powerful. But, and this is really important, you don't want to stare constantly because that can be really intense. What I tell my students is to maintain eye contact for like, 3 to 4 seconds at a time, then briefly look away and then reconnect. And it's totally okay to look away when you're thinking about what to say next.
That's really helpful. Are there any other body language tips you think our listeners should know about?
Oh, yes. One thing that's really important is your hand movements. Like using natural gestures while you speak can actually help you feel more confident and it makes your speech more engaging. But remember, you want your movements to be smooth and purposeful, not like totally wild and distracting.
Um, Speaking of feeling confident, I've noticed that sometimes people start talking really fast when they're nervous. You know what I mean?
Oh, yes. And that's actually one of the biggest things that can really affect your confidence. Like when you're speaking too fast, you're not giving yourself enough time to, well, actually breathe properly, right?
So, what's the right way to breathe when speaking English?
So the key is to take deep breaths from your diaphragm and not just shallow breaths from your chest. Like before you start speaking, take a nice deep breath. And what's really amazing is that proper breathing actually helps you speak more clearly and feel more grounded.
How can someone actually practice this?
That's such a great question. And what I always tell my students is to try this simple exercise. Like put your hand on your stomach and take a breath. Your hand should rise when you breathe in, right? And when you're speaking, try to maintain that same kind of, well, deep, controlled breathing.
And what about the actual pace of speaking?
Oh, this is so important. The thing is, well, you want to aim for what I call a comfortable conversation pace. Like, not too fast, not too slow. And here's something really powerful, using strategic pauses. They're like, well, they're absolutely magical for building confidence.
Could you explain more about these strategic pauses?
Of course. So think of pauses as your secret weapon. Like when you pause between ideas, you're giving yourself time to think and your listeners time to process, right? And what's really cool is that pauses actually make you sound more authoritative and confident. You know what I mean? It shows you're totally in control of the conversation.
That's really interesting. Are there specific moments when we should use these pauses?
Absolutely. Like Pause before important points to build anticipation, and after important points to let them sink in. And don't be afraid of those moments of silence. They're not awkward at all. They're actually really powerful tools for effective communication.
So, um, what about preparing for conversations? Like, is there anything we can do beforehand to feel more confident?
Oh, yes, yes. And and this is actually one of my favorite topics because preparation is like, well, it's absolutely crucial for building confidence, right? The thing is, when you've got some phrases ready to go, you're going to feel so much more prepared.
Could you share some specific strategies?
So, so what I always tell my students is to start by identifying well, those common situations they find themselves in, right? Like maybe it's ordering at a restaurant or having a meeting at work. And then you want to prepare some key phrases for each situation.
Do you have any examples of these key phrases?
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's take a work meeting scenario. Like you might want to prepare phrases for and this is really important. Things like agreeing, disagreeing, or asking for clarification, right? So something like, that's an interesting point, but have we considered? Or could you elaborate on that? These are totally powerful phrases that you can use in any meeting.
And how should people practice these phrases?
Oh, this is such a good question. And what I really, really recommend is something I call scenario rehearsal. Like you actually act out these situations. Well, either with a friend or even just in front of a mirror, right? And what's really amazing is that when you practice these scenarios, they become like second nature.
How often should someone practice?
So the key is consistency, right? Like even just 10 minutes a day can make such a huge difference. And here's something that's totally game-changing. Record yourself. When you listen back, you can hear your progress and identify areas where you need more practice. You know what I mean?
That's interesting. Any other preparation tips?
Oh, yes, yes. And something that's really powerful is creating what I call conversation maps. Like you basically outline potential directions a conversation might go and prepare for different possibilities. It's like, well, having a GPS for your conversations, right? And it makes you feel so much more confident because you're ready for anything.
What about when we make mistakes? That's something that, well, really worries a lot of people.
Oh, yes, yes. And this is actually such an important topic because, well, everyone makes mistakes, right? Like even native speakers mess up all the time. And that's totally normal.
So how should people handle those moments?
So the first thing is to completely change how you think about mistakes, right? Like they're not failures at all. They're actually opportunities to learn and grow. The key is how you handle them. You know what I mean?
Could you give us some specific examples?
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's say you're speaking and you use the wrong word, right? Instead of getting flustered, you can simply say something like, oh, what I meant to say was, and just keep going. The thing is, well, it's all about maintaining that flow, right?
That's interesting. What other strategies do you recommend?
Oh, and here's something that's totally game-changing. Use humor. Like, if you make a mistake, you can just smile and say, oops, my English is taking a coffee break. And what's amazing is that this actually makes you more relatable, you know?
But what if someone gets really stuck in the middle of a conversation?
So I always tell my students to have some go-to phrases ready for these situations, right? Like you can say, let me rephrase that, or what I'm trying to say is these phrases give you time to collect your thoughts and keep the conversation flowing naturally.
What about when someone corrects you?
Oh, this is such a good point. And the key here is to be totally gracious about it. Like just say, thanks for catching that and make a mental note. The thing is, corrections are actually gifts because they help us improve, right? And when you approach it this way, it becomes so much less stressful.
Let's talk about some real situations. Could you walk us through some, like, actual examples?
Oh, yes, yes. And I've got some really great scenarios that'll help everyone understand exactly what we mean. So let's start with something super common, right? Like imagine you're at a coffee shop and you need to order something.
That's something our listeners deal with practically every day.
Exactly, exactly. So here's how you can sound super confident. Instead of saying, can I maybe have a coffee? You want to stand tall, make eye contact, and say, I'd like a medium latte, please, with And this is important, with a smile. The thing is, what the men? It's not just about the words. You know what I mean?
Second paragraph in the dialogue.
In this episode of QuickSpeak English, we're diving deep into how to sound confident when speaking English. It's something I've always struggled with, you know? So I'm really excited to get Lily's expert advice.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to share some tips and tricks, and I really think you'll find them super helpful. Confident English speaking isn't about being perfect. It's about projecting that confidence. You know, it's all about strategy.
Okay, so where do we even begin? Like, what's the first step to sounding confident? I'm all ears.
Well, the first point is really about your preparation, and you know, it's so crucial. Before any conversation, even a casual one, doing a little prep work goes a long way. You don't need to write out a script, but just think about what you want to talk about, what topics might come up, and maybe jot down a few key phrases, keywords. This way you'll feel much more prepared and less anxious, you know?
Oh, that's actually really smart. I never thought about that. I always just wing it, which usually leads to me stumbling over my words.
Exactly. And the second point is about your posture. It sounds silly, but trust me, your body language heavily influences how confident you sound. Stand or sit up straight, make eye contact, and use open and inviting gestures. Even if you're not feeling confident on the inside, projecting that confident posture on the outside helps a lot. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, you know?
Wow, I never realized how much my posture affected things. I'll definitely try to work on that. So, what's next on the list?
Right? The third point focuses on your pace and clarity. Speaking too quickly often makes you sound nervous and unsure. So slow down, take your time, articulate each word clearly. This really helps the listener understand you, and you'll feel more in control and more confident in what you're saying. And it's also really, really important to pause, to breathe, just like we're doing now. It helps you organize your thoughts, you know?
Okay, so slow down and breathe. Got it. But what if I'm still not feeling confident? What if I still feel nervous?
That's perfectly normal. Even experienced speakers get nervous and you know, it's all about managing those nerves. The thing is, well, you can try a few mental techniques. Deep breaths, visualization, positive self-talk. Tell yourself you're going to do great, and remind yourself of all the times you've successfully communicated in English before. You've got this.
Okay, I think I can manage that. So, are there any other little tips you can share, like quick fixes, you know?
Oh yeah, absolutely. One really useful tip is to focus on your vocabulary. Using more precise and vivid language makes your speech sound more polished and confident. It's like it adds weight to your words, you know? And another thing, try to use a wider range of sentence structures. Don't just stick to simple sentences. And remember, small words can sound just as powerful and effective like this, that, now. They can add a lot more emphasis. And using words like absolutely and definitely to express certainty can help.
That's really helpful. I tend to use the same words all the time.
It's a common thing. And don't beat yourself up about it. You know, it's a process. It's like building a muscle. Practice makes perfect. Well, it makes progress. And another thing, try recording yourself speaking. This way you can identify areas for improvement and pinpoint the things you're still struggling with. It's surprisingly insightful.
Wow, this is so much to take in. I feel like I've learned so much already, but what about filler words? Everyone uses them, right? Does that affect confidence?
It does actually in certain ways. Using too many filler words like, you know, can make you sound less confident and sometimes even hesitant. And that's a common problem, you know. But the trick is to be mindful of it. Try to reduce their usage gradually, and you will, you know, see a huge difference. It might take time, but eventually it becomes much easier.
So, to recap, preparation, posture, pace, positive self-talk, vocabulary, and reducing filler words. That's a lot. But I feel totally armed with this new knowledge.
Exactly. And remember, it's a journey, not a race. Be patient with yourself, celebrate small victories, and keep practicing. The more you speak English, the more confident you will become. And just remember, even if you make mistakes, don't worry. It's all part of the learning process. We all stumble sometimes, even me. Now, I bet you're ready to go out there and show off those confident English skills. It might seem daunting at first, but I bet you will be surprised at how much you've improved.
You're right, Lily. Thanks for all the tips. I feel much more confident about speaking English now, and I'm excited to put all this into practice. And thanks for listening, everyone. This is Sophia signing off from QuickSpeak English.
And this is Lily, reminding you that consistent effort is key. Keep practicing and keep speaking. Remember that speaking English is about connecting and sharing, so go out there and make your voice heard. Bye, everyone.